You reply in 30 seconds, every time. Doesn't matter what you were doing, eating, sleeping, mid-sentence with someone standing right in front of you. The phone buzzes and your thumb moves before your brain does. You're there. You're always there. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you think that's a good thing. You think being responsive means being reliable. Being available means being valued. Being easy to reach means people will hold on tighter. But here's the part no one tells you: when you're busy refreshing your inbox at midnight, the easier you are to reach, the less people actually think about you when you're not around. That's not a theory. That's a pattern so consistent across human psychology that it has a name, a mechanism, and a very specific way it shows up in your relationships, your career, and your own sense of self-worth. And today we're going to go through the 5 types of people who fall into this trap. Maybe you'll recognize one of them. Maybe it's been you for longer than you'd like to admit. Picture this. Someone texts their friend at 2 a.m. "I can't sleep, brain won't stop." And the friend replies in 4 minutes. Every time, not just once, every time. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., Sunday morning, Christmas Eve. At first, the friend feels needed, feels chosen. That warmth of being someone's person, it's real and it matters. But over weeks, then months, something shifts. The texts become more frequent. The problems get bigger. And somewhere along the way, the friend stops being a person and becomes a service. The person texting doesn't even realize it's happened. They're not cruel, they're just comfortable. And that comfort is the problem. When someone knows with total certainty that you will always be there, they stop appreciating that you showed up. It becomes ambient, like electricity. You don't think about electricity until the lights go out. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, the brain's tendency to normalize pleasant experiences over time. The more consistent a source of support or connection, the less emotionally significant it registers. You didn't become less valuable. You became invisible through reliability. And if you're the person on the other end of those 2 a.m. texts, you know this feeling. You never said no. You thought saying no would mean you didn't care. But the cost of never saying no is that people stop understanding what they'd lose if they lost you. Then there's the person who cancels plans and writes a 6-paragraph apology. Every meeting rescheduled comes with a full dossier of context: why it happened, what they were dealing with, a timeline of events, and reassurances that it won't happen again. The logic makes sense on the surface. More explanation means more honesty. More honesty means more connection. But what it actually communicates is this: I don't trust that you'll stay if I don't justify myself constantly. Over-explaining is not transparency. It's preemptive self-defense. It's the behavior of someone who has learned, somewhere, sometime, that their presence alone was not enough. So they fill the silence with reasons. They answer questions nobody asked. They smooth over discomfort before anyone else even feels it. And here's the brutal part: the more you over-explain, the less weight your words carry. When every absence comes with a novel, people start skimming. When every mistake comes with a flood of context, they stop holding you accountable for anything because there's always a story. You've trained the people around you to expect performance instead of presence. The psychology here sits close to something called anxious attachment, a deep, learned fear that connection is fragile and must be maintained through effort, through being easy, through making yourself as frictionless as possible. But frictionless isn't magnetic. And the people we genuinely value, they have edges, they have limits, they occasionally make us wait. You've met this person. Maybe you are this person. Every step of a project gets reported. Every change in mood gets posted. Every quiet Tuesday afternoon becomes content, not because the audience demanded it, but because silence started to feel dangerous. There's a version of availability that isn't physical, it's informational. The person who makes sure you always know exactly where they are, what they're thinking, what they ate, and how they feel about it. The silence never lasts long enough to make anyone wonder. And when people never wonder, they never search. And when they never search, they never find. Mystery gets a bad reputation. It sounds manipulative, like you're playing games. But it's not about withholding information to manufacture interest. It's about the simple fact that human curiosity requires a gap. We think about things that are unresolved. We're drawn to stories that haven't ended. We reach for what we can't fully see. When you show every card the moment you hold it, the other person never has to lean in. The tension that creates closeness, that small uncertainty, that wanting to know more, it dies instantly. And what replaces it is familiarity, which sounds nice. But familiarity without longing is just background noise. The constant updater is usually someone deeply afraid of being misunderstood. They narrate their life in real time because they want to control how they're perceived. But the irony is brutal. The more you explain yourself in real time, the less interesting you become over time. Ask them anything. Free Saturday? Yes. Can you cover this shift? Yes. Would you mind staying late, lending money, helping move, reviewing my document, and being there at 7 a.m.? Yes. 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 This person has never said no in a way that stuck. Every boundary floated was tested, and every test failed, and now the people in their lives have learned, consciously or not, that pushback works. That persistence pays off. That this person's no is just the opening bid in a negotiation they've already decided to lose. And what happens to someone whose yes is guaranteed? Their yes stops meaning anything. Not because people are ungrateful, though sometimes they are, but because value at its core is scarcity. The things we guard carefully signal what we believe we're worth. When you give your time, your energy, your presence away without friction, you are telling people, in the clearest possible language, that you don't think it's worth much. This isn't about being difficult. It's not about manufacturing artificial scarcity or playing games. It's about the basic human reality that we respect what costs something. We cherish what required effort to get. We fight for what we have to earn. The psychology behind this traces back to reactance theory, the human response to perceived scarcity. When something becomes unavailable, we want it more. When it's always available, the wanting goes quiet. The instant yes hasn't learned this, or they have learned it and they're too afraid of rejection to let it change their behavior. This one is the most heartbreaking type because their availability comes from love, genuine, deep, attentive love. They notice what you need before you say it. They fix problems before they become problems. They smooth the way so consistently that the people around them walk through life without ever feeling the rocks they never had to step over. The anticipator has made itself indispensable, but invisible. Because when comfort is seamless, when effort is invisible, when someone else's anxiety is quietly absorbed before it surfaces, nobody thinks to say thank you. Nobody even knows there was something to thank. The labor disappears into the ease it created. And here's the cruelest part, the anticipator often can't stop. Because the moment they do, everything they've been quietly managing erupts. The chaos they've been absorbing hits the surface. And instead of gratitude for the years of invisible work, they face confusion and frustration from people who genuinely don't know what they've been carrying. There's a specific kind of grief in this. The grief of being thoroughly, completely available and feeling utterly unseen. Of doing everything right by the logic of love and still ending up alone in the exhaustion of it. The mechanism is simple and awful. When someone removes all friction from a relationship, they remove the texture that reminds people they're dealing with another human being who has needs, limits, and a breaking point. The relationship becomes a utility, and we don't miss utilities when they work, only when they stop. None of this is about becoming cold or strategic, or treating human connection like a game where scarcity is a move you make to win. It's about something more fundamental, the recognition that your presence is worth something, that your attention has a cost. The people in your life deserve the version of you that is sometimes unavailable because you are living a full life, not waiting on the edges of theirs. The research on this is consistent. People do not value what costs them nothing. Not because they are shallow, but because value is calibrated through effort, through waiting, through the small ache of absence. When you are always there, you deny people the chance to feel what it would be like if you weren't. And that feeling, that small pang of where are they, is what builds longing, which is what builds genuine appreciation. Being less available is not a manipulation tactic. It's an act of self-respect. It's the quiet insistence that your time and energy are finite and that the people who get them should know it. The paradox is this: the moment you start protecting your availability, the people worth keeping will lean in. And the people who only showed up because you made it effortless, they'll drift. And that information, painful as it is worth having. So here's what I want you to sit with. Which of these 5 types felt closest to home? The emotional safety net, always on call for everyone but yourself. The instant yes, whose yes has been emptied of meaning. The anticipator, carrying invisible weight and wondering why no one notices. Because the first step isn't changing your behavior. It's being honest about the pattern. And then asking, what am I afraid will happen if I'm not always there? That answer is usually the real work. If this hits somewhere real, subscribe. We go deeper into psychology, behavior, and the patterns that quietly run your life every single week. See you there.